Welcome to our channel, Behind My Story. Please like, share and subscribe.
We face a lot of ordeals in our lives. Some have predictable results. Others are chaotic. Some are happy. Some are sad. Some we remember. Some we desperately try to forget. And there are a few that impact change in our lives. My name is Patricia. I'm 21 years old. I live with my mom, dad, and little brother Alonso. My father owns a transportation company. He started out his life as a porter, bought his first car, and eventually worked his way up to opening a transportation business. Mom helped him a lot, and we had a stable, happy life. My dream was to be an artist. I wanted my paintings to inspire people. My parents encouraged me to pursue this particular interest, and so did my friends. I know, you're probably thinking, where does change impact fit in the story? Be patient. I'm getting there. As we all know, life can change direction any given second. Well, that is what happened to me. School was out for summer break. Dad still had to work during that period and didn't have a lot of free time to spend with us. But he decided to use that opportunity to take us to a coastal city that he described as an amazing fun city full of artists. I was practically jumping for joy. We hadn't had a family outing for a long time. So, we packed our things and began our journey. While my parents were chatting, I was watching the road, and Alonso was listening to music. My father pinched my cheek. It was his way of making me laugh. I hugged his neck, and as he was getting my arms off, he suddenly saw another car ahead of us. It was in the wrong lane, and it was heading towards us fast. The car fishtailed and went into a spin. Dad hit the brakes hard to avoid it, causing our car to flip over a couple of times. I watched all of this play out in slow motion. The car braking, skidding, overturning, Alonso screaming, and then silence. I opened my eyes. I think I had momentarily lost consciousness. My arms felt like lead. I heard a strange voice. A stranger opened the car door and pulled me out of the wreckage. Then he pulled out my parents, and then my brother. I felt like I was drifting in a dream. My vision was blurry. The man helping us had blonde hair. Mom, Alonso, and I weren't badly injured, but Dad was in bad shape. I tried to reach out to Dad, but the blonde man stopped me and told me that he would drive us all down to a hospital at once. He carried us one by one to his car and drove us to the hospital. My vision was still all blurry. Dad had lost a considerable amount of blood. The blonde man stayed with us every moment. He even donated blood in Dad's name. He asked me if I wanted anything. I thanked him and said no. Then he suggested that I try and get some sleep. I woke up to find Mom and Alonso awake and in good condition. The doctor informed us that Dad was going to be okay and that we could go home soon. I asked the doctor about the blonde man. He said that he left after being assured that we were all going to be okay. I regretted that I hadn't had a chance to say thank you for saving our lives. I would never forget his kind and selfless help that he offered to complete strangers. I decided to study medicine and become a doctor. I felt that saving people's lives was infinitely more important than drawing pictures, so I went to med school, and I did my internship at the Central Emergency Hospital. A lot of serious cases, but I felt happy and relieved every time a patient healed. But then something happened. Something I never expected. It was Christmas Day. I had a shift to cover at the time. I was chatting with a couple of other doctors when we heard an ambulance approaching from a distance. Victims of a horrible multi-vehicle pileup accident came rushing in. It was going to be a long, tiring night. We did a triage and began treating the patients starting with the most serious injuries. We had to call in additional staff who were on vacation. One man was shouting, "Please save this man, he's dying." I rushed over to help and was shocked to see the unconscious victim was the very same blonde man who had saved me and my family years ago. He was older now, and his hair was mostly white, but I was quite sure it was him. I told the other doctors that I was going to handle this case personally. The man had a serious head injury and was bleeding profusely. He also had broken bones and bruises everywhere. I staunched the blood, while another doctor worked on setting and splinting the broken bones. We spent 8 long hours in the operating room. His need for blood was dire, and I didn't hesitate to donate some of mine in his name, just as he had done for my dad. After the surgery, His family arrived. I welcomed them personally and reassured them that he would fully recover without any serious side effects. The next day, I went to his room and found him awake. He was smiling and said that he couldn't find the right words to thank me. I told him that he had saved me before, and that was thanks enough. He smiled. Then I went back to my office after an exhausting night. I recalled that horrible day when that man's selfless effort all those years ago had saved us all, and I was extremely grateful that I was able to repay his kindness. He had inspired a change in my life, and I had no regrets seeing how it all turned out. It looks like he and I turned out to be each other's guardian angels in this world, and thank God for that. Surrogate mom. Intriguing title, isn't it? I confess I didn't expect to be a mom at such a young age, but the circumstances often determine the path we should take for us. My mom was the reason I made this choice, but please, hold your judging to the end. Wait until you hear my story. My name is Rita, and I'm 17 years old. I was happy living with my family. My father was a doctor. My mother was a housewife. I had 2 younger sisters, Carla and Sarah, and we lived in a nice, quiet neighborhood. Our home was always filled with joy and laughter. My father was a great dad, and my mother was a fantastic mom. We enjoyed a stable life until Mom suddenly fell ill. She started having frequent headaches. My father took her to the neurologist, and he said that her situation was serious, that she needed urgent surgery. Our life was suddenly turned upside down. We became sad and depressed. None of us talked much. Father was always trying to console Mom, but whenever he was alone, he cried just like we did. Our life became gloomy. The doctor scheduled a date for the surgery, and the closer the date got, the more anxious we became. When the day finally arrived, we packed some of Mom's things to take to the hospital. She looked as if it would be her last time to see us. I had a bad feeling about this. When we arrived at the hospital, Mom called me over and said, "Rita, you have to take care of your father and sisters." I suddenly panicked, and I told her, "Mom, stop talking like that. You're going to get better and come back home." She put her hand over my mouth and said, "Of course I will, but you need to take care of them while I'm gone. Will you do this for me?" I was crying, but I tried to calm down and nodded. Then the doctor called her in. She hugged everyone and went into the operating room for surgery. We waited outside the room, worried. After a short while, the doctor came out and called my father in quickly. I knew what had happened from the expression on the doctor's face. Father came back out a few minutes later and looked at us. We were crying, and he hugged us. Our life fell into a miserable, boring routine. Father and my sisters were always sad, and I did my best to try and take care of them. One day, Father called me to him and said, "You know how much I love you, all of you, but sometimes we have to make difficult decisions." I didn't like the sound of that. He said that he's going to have to get remarried. I took 2 steps back and said, "Get married again? But why?" And he told me we needed someone to take care of us. And he knows that no one can take my mother's place, but I didn't want him to finish. And I said, "Father, I will never take Mother's place. And no one ever can, but I will do my best. I'll do everything she used to do. I'm old enough and responsible enough. I can handle this. Besides, I promised Mom that I would." He looked at me intently and gave up the idea of getting remarried right away. At first it was very hard for me to learn to do all the things, the cleaning, the cooking, but I got used to it, step by step. I searched the internet for tips to make my job easier and more efficient. I asked my sisters not to make a mess at home, and they were more than helpful. I would buy them presents every now and then. My cooking improved after many failed attempts. Whenever I got tired and wanted to quit, I would just remember Mom's face, and it would give me strength to go on. 10 years later, I am still the mom of the house. Dad hasn't remarried yet. My sisters grew up and are doing well in their studies. Our flat is always clean, and we're happy again. The road has been long, but I did what I had to, and I did it well.
My son killed me. Yes, you read that correctly. I am not a ghost or an evil spirit that needs rescuing. I have a brave heart. My name is Megan, and I hope to inspire you with my story. I lived with my father and my sister Marlene after the death of my mother, who died from an illness. Though I was only 18 years old, I became responsible for taking care of my whole family. I did everything for them, like cooking, cleaning, washing, etc. My father was a great man, and he did his best to make us happy. I supported both my sister and my father. We faced a lot of problems together, illnesses, financial problems, school, and the like. But there came a day when I had to make a life and death decision at my young, tender age. I fell in love, as any girl my age tends to do. My sweetheart turned out to be loved my neighbor, a guy named Dave. We had grown up together, and we shared everything. Love, sadness, jokes. Our dreams had evolved as we grew up too, so we decided to marry. He knew all about my life circumstances, so he chose a flat near my family for me. We had a nice party and celebrated with our families and friends. Every day, he proved himself to be a responsible man. He loved and respected me, and I him. Finishing my studies was one of my dreams, and Dave supported me in every way to achieve it. But my biggest dream was to have a baby. But sometimes life just isn't fair. One day, while cleaning the house, my heart began beating rapidly, and I couldn't breathe well. I was barely able to call out to Dave, who came immediately when he heard me cry for help. I had had this symptom before when I was younger, but I never told my father because I didn't want to worry him. Dave took me to the hospital, where a doctor said I had a serious heart condition. And not only that, I was pregnant too. Pregnancy and a heart condition do not a good combination make. So we had to choose between the baby's life or mine. My father and Dave asked me to abort the baby, though they tried hard to persuade me. I resolutely refused. I agonized a lot during my pregnancy. My father and Dave were so worried for my safety. My father and Marlene left their flat to live with me. In addition, Dave cut back on his working hours to stay with me. The day came when I went into labor. They took me to the hospital, where the doctor checked me over and pronounced that my condition was so serious that I wouldn't be able to survive the childbirth. My family and I were shocked. I held Dave's hand and told him that I was strong enough to survive this. Dave hugged me, crying tears like a river. I was so afraid, but I did my best to hide that fact. I looked to my protruding belly and said to my baby, "I want you to know that I sacrificed myself for you. You had better grow up to be a great young man. I love you." Then the baby started pushing its way into this world. The scene fades to blackness. The baby is born. Suddenly, a year later, a birthday party is being held. The baby is now 1 year old. A woman is singing with the baby and her family. The woman looks at you and winks. Megan says, "Haha, fooled you. I lived through the childbirth. Sometimes life gives us a second chance, but you have to be willing to accept the risk."